Yep, deadlines remain unchangified. The exam 1 deadline and quizzes part 2 deadline is passed, so hopefully that's done. Next major deadline is coming up. Exam 2, exam 3, quizzes part 3, oh sorry, exam 2. Quizzes part 3, November 16th. Then exam 3, exam 4, quizzes part 4, December 7th, data shall live in infamy. And then exam 5, deadlines at the end of the normal final, but it's done online. And then for the paper, draft deadline November 9th, +5 deadline November 14th, emergency deadline November 21st, and the desperation deadline December 8th. Before pressing on to you more of Leibniz, who's monading monads, anything about any previous stuff, or tips on unions. I'm not great at them, but I'm confident enough so no one ever screams racist stuff at me, except for the racist.
But you don't know what's what.
I know what's what.
Like when I'm shooting.
You shoot everything. You shoot all the things. If it's on your
Then
team,
you don't have no more bullets left.
then you start hitting with a stick. That's why God gave you sticks, to hit things with your own bullets. So, the last thing we looked at was the identity of indiscernibles, or Leibniz's law. And the idea is a metaphysical principle: if two things have the exact same qualities, then they must be the same thing. They're one, not two. Now, there is some, as always, some debate about that. Because the question could be, could you have two things that are utterly identical, yet be two and not one? Now, again, we have to set aside our notions of things like identical twins, which are really a lot alike but not strictly identical, because strictly identity means there is nothing different between them. Now, part of it, of course, rests on, do you consider, say, location a difference? Because if it is, then you couldn't have two things that are one thing because they'd have different locations. But if the location of something is not a quality that it has, then in theory you could have two identical things located a certain distance apart from each other. And as you might imagine, there's a lot of debate.
Which would kill time travel, right?
Yeah, if you couldn't. Yeah, because well, time travel we saw would seem to require two things being a distance away from each other that are identical. But we saw a way to work around that. Now, Leibniz, of course, his fundamental metaphysical entities are these things that are called monads. And as we saw, they're real, they're indivisible, and they have no extension, and they're simple, and they're all mods, so they all perceive. But as noted, it ranges from the highest perceiving entities, they'd be God, of course, the monad that is God, but at the highest perception, down to the least of things, which is least perception, and then we'd be in here somewhere. And like bathroom soap would be like down here. So the soap would perceive, but it's not consciously perceiving. And same with everything. For Leibniz, like your clothing is perceiving, but it's not conscious. So
How could it be perceiving but not conscious?
it's not aware that it's. I mean, one way to think of it is to use a metaphor. Think of the thermometer. In a way, in some sense, it's like perceiving the temperature, but it's not aware that it's doing so. Now, you could make the argument that you could not have perception without consciousness. That would be impossible.
Because what would the clothes be perceiving, that it's on their bodies? Or?
Yeah, it's and the reason why things perceive stuff is Leibniz's view is that everything, it's kind of the problem of how does everything know like where it is and what it's supposed to be doing and how it's supposed to be reacting. And Leibniz solves that problem by making everything perceive. So everything knows like, it perceives like where it is, where everything's going on, and so that's how everything does.
What perception occurred in the mind?
Yeah, I mean, and they're all minds.
So he's saying that that shirt has a mind.
Yes, but it's not conscious. It doesn't think.
If it's not conscious,
So
then it
it's
can't
a
perceive.
mind different from our mind.
Yes,
But it's still a mind.
yes. I mean, one way to look at it, think of it, analogically, is think about how we think about animals. We've got conscious perception. We think, And then we look at like dogs and cats, we think, yeah, they think, but they don't use language, but they don't perceive as well, they don't understand as well as
Yeah.
we do. And then you can go down to like, say like insects, and they're clearly like aware of stuff, they perceive things, like when you try to like grab a spider, it'll like
Yeah, it'll.
fight, jump, or try to fight you, depending on what type of spider it is. And then if you go down to things like bacteria,
Mhm.
we don't think they're conscious or thinking, but they do react to,
Yeah, they just perform what they're supposed
Yeah.
to.
and you keep on, shrinking down.
But then all those things are alive.
Right,
So to say that something that's non-living has perception, is.
well, you go into viruses, and there's, a virus is the, sort of like the transition point between living and non-living, because they do reproduce, they have RNA, but there's some debate of whether, are they really like alive? And then, once you go like below virus, where you can make the argument, well, maybe the boundary between living and non-living is pretty gray. And you could argue that even things that are non-living might have, they're non-living creatures could have some type of perception, because they do react to stuff.
So what does that shirt react to?
Well, it reacts, it's aware of its location, so, when I put it on, it doesn't like fall through me. I mean, one analogy, imagine if you're coding like, doing a 3D image of something. And if you're putting like, if you're working in something like Poser or like Adobe software with the 3D software, or like Maya or something, it doesn't, like, you just can't put clothes on things like you put them on yourself. You have to, code, position them and lock them in place and stuff. You have to make the clothes aware of the, metaphorically speaking, aware of the figure. Otherwise, they would just, you'd move the figure and the clothes would just be floating there. So the shirt has to know, metaphorically speaking, that it needs to stick with me. So it's gonna, it's gonna be, so it doesn't like just fall through
Would you be
me.
able to say the things that are on the lower end of the mind, I guess, have like, or kind of like an ingrained knowledge, it's more like a behavior as opposed to a consciousness?
Yeah, they would be, we could think of them the way we think of, normal matter. Like instead of it, we're thinking like a thermostat. We don't think of a thermostat. It's thinking, but it's got like pre-coded behavior in it. And so all of the molecules and stuff are
And so would
pre-coded.
it take,
Again, you're talking about,
Well, if you don't like perception, think of like information. It gets information.
I understand what you're saying, but my thing is, the property of mercury is to react to temperature.
Right, and it perceives the temperature.
Right.
Look at
So,
what.
but if you just held that shirt up and just dropped it, it's gonna fall.
Right.
But if you drop it on you, it's gonna, if you put it on and let it go, your body is what's doing the work, the shirt is doing anything.
Right, well,
It's just taking the form of your body.
well, for Leibniz, he would say the monads that make up me, my physical body, are perceiving the monads making up the shirt, the monads in the shirt are perceiving the body. And so that way they know, because the challenge is, how does everything know how to like interact? How does the mercury know what temperature it is? How does the, object, how does a tree when it falls know like where the ground is? And what Leibniz is trying to do is say like how that works. And the natural thing to do is say, well, everything is perceiving stuff, it's getting data. And if you don't like the idea of it, like, I kind of picture like, everything's got like little googly eyes, like stuck on everything. If you don't like that idea, like everything with little eyes, like a little rock with googly eyes on it, like that way it knows stuff, or your shirt having googly eyes. You can think of it like in computer science terms, or engineering terms. You can think of it as, these are objects, just like your thermometer, and they have to have, they get information, and they react to that information, they react to things. So if you don't like the language of like perception, you could talk about it in terms of reaction, interaction, data, etc. Or you can say it's all nonsense, which is always an option. Now, this will, as you might imagine, things are getting even weirder right now. Now, for Leibniz, the reason why you need them to be perceiving is for many reasons, but here's one of the reasons. As Leibniz sees it, the monads are windowless. What does that mean? Well, it's a metaphor meaning nothing can get in and nothing can get out. So it's like a Roche motel, except that nothing can ever check in. nothing can check out because nothing can ever get in. So they're entirely self-contained. And he says metaphorically, there are no windows by which things get in or get out. So then the question is, if nothing gets in or gets out, there's no causal interaction, how does my shirt, like, node keep up with my body? How do the monads that make up your body know to hang together? How do, like when you bite into the sandwich, how do the monads in the sandwich interact with the monads in your teeth? How does everything work? Now, what he's facing here is a really good analogy of this would be, imagine you're trying to code or create, if you ever worked with software that allows you to create, like, say, simple animations, like a basic program for doing that. Even something like PowerPoint, like you're doing like animated slides and things moving around. Now, if you're trying to, imagine you take a simple case. Suppose you're trying to make a PowerPoint slide, you have like a ball come down, bounce the bottom of the slide, bounce off the slide. Now, what you have to do, of course, is you just can't like put a ball there and just, it's not just going to fall and do stuff. You got to do all the coding for it. You have to program its location, move it down there, move it off there. So all the data has to be put in. In a way, metaphorically speaking, the object, the little image, has to know where it is and where it's going to do all its, just know the boundaries, etc. If you're doing something more complicated, like coding like a video game or doing the CGI for a movie, you got to code everything. And, because the objects aren't going to they don't work like objects unless you make them work like objects. So you got to code it so things aren't clipping into each other. So like the helmet doesn't go through the person's head, so their hand doesn't go through their body unless you want it to. And so the monads have to like make sure everything has to sync up. So that way, when in my mind I'm going blah 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 blah, in your mind you hear blah 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 blah. So how does it make this work? Answer: pre-established harmony. Now the normal view is that things are causally interacting. I'm talking, vibrating the air molecules, they hit your ear, runs down to your auditory nerve into your brain, and you interpret it. Leibniz's view is this: each of us has within us everything we're ever going to experience is in our monad.
So it'd be kind of like back to Plato's thing with the universes.
Yeah, in a way, it's all built in. Now, to use a metaphor, you can think of the monad is like, well, think of it like a computer. And it is well, it doesn't have parts, but imagine metaphorically speaking that it's got a memory storage system. And in that storage system is everything that's going to happen to that monad. And what it does is, your mind, you are the monad, and that's in your memory bank. And what it does is, it plays all that stuff that's in there in real time. And so like what's happening in the class now is like right here, and everything that's ever going to happen to you is already in there. Like it's like a DVD, or like a video on your inner hard drive, and it's all there. Everything you hear, everything you taste, everything you experience, all in there. Now, what happens is, of course, is that everything, according to Leibniz, God creates us all. And so everybody has got in their hard drive all similar stuff. So when you're hearing me, you're not really hearing me. What's happening is that in me, the monad that is me, my movie is playing of me talking and seeing all of you from my perspective. What's happening to you is that in the monad that is you, it's playing that you're hearing me and you're seeing everything from your perspective. To use an analogy, if you ever play video games, multiplayer games, and you're running around the video game world looking at other people, what the server is doing is working hard to make sure that everything you see is from your perspective. Even though none of that's real, it's all programmed. And so imagine a video game where everything you're ever going to do is already in there. So you don't need like a server, but it's already in there. So whenever you do something, well, since God creates this game, he already knows everything you're going to do.
Life is like a simulation?
In a way, yeah. Because everything we're experiencing is real because you're really experiencing it. and I'm really here, you're really here, but it's all in your mind. But it's all real, because I'm real, you're real, everybody's real. But what you're experiencing is from your perspective. And again,
So you're in my mind, she's in my mind, whole glass is in my mind.
well, your experience of it is your mind. What you're seeing and hearing, etc., is in your. Just like if you play a computer game or go to a movie, what you're seeing is on your screen. But of course, the actors aren't in your mind. You're just seeing what's on the screen. So I'm real, you're real. What you're seeing in a way is the movie of me. And the movie your whole life is already in there. And it plays out in real time.
So how's the mechanism in my mind gonna know what you're supposed to do?
God knows.
Oh, so God,
Yep, God creates pre-established harmony. So at 3:52 p.m., I'm saying 3:52 p.m., and it's ticking in my mind, and the same thing is happening in your mind. You heard me say. And Leibniz uses the analogy of two metronomes, like the little ticky things that people use when they play piano, like synchronized, and you have them in separate rooms. They're not causing each other, but they're in perfect sync. Or if you had two bands playing, and they synchronize, so they're playing, even though they don't hear each other, they're playing the same song. And if he was around today, he'd use the example of servers. You text, and then someone else gets the message, although your text doesn't really go anywhere. It's just you see the text on your phone, and the server makes sure that the text appears on the person's phone. In this case, God is like the server, but he's already preloaded everything you're ever going to do.
So how would you explain people who have like dissociative personalities or disordered minds and things like that? Would it just be that that's their subjective interpretation of reality, or is it actually something?
Good question, because if people have anytime people are hallucinating or having screwed up perceptions, that would be what God put in there. Because they never, so maybe it's just that those are errors, So if someone's having hallucinations, in a way they would be really seeing it, but they're the only one seeing it because, it's only in their monad.
Every experience of different things is different.
Yep. And it would allow, and of course then the question is, would this make no reality? You raised the question, are you seeing it? It is, on one hand, yeah, because we're not experiencing an external world. On the other hand, it is one world, because what God, just like with a video game, when you're playing the video game, again, you get the server serving up the world. In this case, God has already served up the world already in everybody's minds. So you're seeing things from your perspective as if it was all real. And I'm seeing things from my perspective as if it were all real. And so there is one world. So Leibniz, his view is that we're all experiencing the same thing from our same perspective. We're all playing the same game, metaphorically speaking. Maybe. So
question. So you're here and you're actually teaching, and I'm perceiving you teach.
yeah, yep.
But you're still actually teaching.
Yeah, so in my mind, I'm experiencing the room from my perspective, and in your mind, you're experiencing the room from your perspective. So on one hand, there is no room.
There is no room.
On one hand, there's not. So it's not there's not a physical object here that we're experiencing together. But on the other hand, we're all it's like we're playing a video game. There is no. If you're playing a video game, there is no Azeroth. There is no.
That's because we're all mind and nothing else.
Right.
So like I was saying before, so there is no reality.
There is reality. That is the reality.
The reality in our mind.
Right. I mean, it's as real as it gets.
Yeah, so again, in the actuality, there is no reality, just what we perceive in our mind.
Right, but it's as real because
yeah, it's virtually real.
Yeah, because everything you touch, taste, smell, hear, all those experiences you're really having them.
But that's virtual reality.
Right. There's no material substance behind them, but everything you're experiencing is not.
Virtually.
Yeah, it's not a lot. I mean, because it's really happening to you, according to Leibniz. Well, it's real, and it's not material, but it's real. So yeah, different entities could have very different perceptions. So if somebody was like one of the creatures from District 9, their experiences would be of that creature. And if someone like changed into the creature, like a character that changes into one of those creatures, their experiences would be different, would change. So Leibniz does allow that individual creatures would perceive the world their own type of way. So like creatures with different senses, different feelings, etc., would have different experiences. But the whole world, there is but one world, so it's not like, honestly, it's not like you're experiencing a room full of like dinosaur people, and I'm experiencing a room full of humans, and you're experiencing a room full of District 9 creatures, but everything seems normal. It's that we're all experiencing the same thing, just from our own perspective. So on one hand, yeah, there's not a material, physical room, but the room it's real in every conceivable sense. Yeah. Now, you do raise this question about, how is this real? And his claim is, on one hand you could say, yeah, it's not real, because he does say that the extended things, three-dimensional objects, they're not real things, because for him, there's nothing that's actually really extended and spatial. And again, he uses the metaphor of a rainbow. Rainbows, on one hand, are not real, but do we experience them? Do we see rainbows? Yeah. And so for him, the depth that we seem to experience is an illusion, in a way. And he uses an analogy to how, he uses an example of like painting. People can create the appearance of, quite convincingly, of something having depth, even though it's just done with painting. I mean, even better example, Leibniz, if you've been around today, you could use all kinds of computer analogies. Think of like three-dimensional images in computers, like games. It can look, or think of CGI in movies. It can look completely photorealistic, but of course it doesn't have any depth to it because it's just mathematical code. And so probably the best analogy would be that, CGI, computer-generated images, which have no three-dimensionality, but we perceive them that way. So they're not really 3D, but there's no real difference, because everything you experience is, what you experience, or so it occurs. Now, what about time then? Now Leibniz considers space not to be like a thing. So it's not like space with stuff in it. For Newton, space was like a box in which we keep our stuff. For Leibniz, space is the relations between things in our experience. And again, the computer metaphor is perfect for this. If you're, looking at a CGI image or playing a video game, it's not occurring in space. It's effectively it's two-dimensional on the screen. But of course, mathematically, it looks like, it feels like and looks like space, even though we know it's not. And that's what reality is for him. It's like a video game. Now, of course, everything we experience is space-like. There's no meaningful difference. You can still seem to walk around, and it feels exactly like it would if it was three-dimensional. It's a difference than a difference.
Do you let these people walk around free?
Yeah.
I said it, and they let these people walk around
They do.
free.
They do. Because we don't hurt anybody. We just say crazy stuff. Now, time, much like Einstein, Leibniz also accepts that time is relative. The way time works is it's our perception of the relation between events. The idea being that there's no absolute time, it's how you experience things. So there's not a space-time for Leibniz. There's the monads experiencing space-like, having space experiences or space-like experiences, and having experiences that we consider to be time.
So if I was using him in my story, how would I explain him and his theory?
It depends what you're using it for. Like what?
To diffuse time travel, where you get, no one can be from another world or another time.
Well, for Leibniz, there is no time to travel in,
That's right.
but you, since we experience things in order, you could experience the equivalent of time travel, where there's no time for you to move around in, because for him it's the relation between ideas, but you could create the same exact experience just by rearranging the relation of stuff. So you could have the effect of, you wouldn't be time traveling in the sense of moving through time, because he doesn't think time is a separate thing, but you could experience, like for example, you could have in your monad meeting Jesse James, for example, or meeting a dinosaur. So you could experience what would be, as far as you could feel it, time travel, even though he doesn't think time is a real thing. So yeah, on one hand, you couldn't travel in time because there's no time to travel in, but you could have experiences that would be exactly like that you'd say were time travel. Like if you imagine you perceive that you're hopping into the TARDIS, makes the sound, vanishes, you hop out, there's Alexander the Great, you wave to him, and say, hey Alexander, you hop back in. You haven't moved through time because there's no time to move in, but you've had an experience which you would say, well,
That ain't helping me out now, because
Nope.
he doing the same thing that they is saying, that it can happen. I'm trying to confuse it.
well, there is no time to move in for Leibniz, but you could, so you couldn't, your monad could not move through time. But again, you could have that experience of hopping into a time of a machine.
So I would say,
Where you go
since
back.
my mind perceiving this.
Yeah. So, yeah, on one hand, you could not have time travel because there's no time to travel in. And you can't have space travel because there's no space to travel in. But it's exactly as if you're traveling in space. And so presumably you could also have it exactly as if you're traveling in time. It'd feel like that. I mean, think of like in a video game. You know, or in a movie, you're watching, going through all this stuff. You're sitting in the seat, not moving anywhere, but it's in a way it's kind of as if you're moving. Or if you put one of those VR headsets on, you're not going anywhere, but it's as if you're going someplace. And so, in Leibniz, in a way, your point was an apt one, namely that we exist in a virtual reality. There is no physical reality; it's all mental. But it's not a lie because that's what's real. And it's put there by God. Now, what about the mind-body problem? Now, we saw that with Descartes. He's got, the two substance view. He's got bodies and minds. Now, Leibniz has kind of some weird stuff with this. Now, on one hand, you think he would have been just pretty economical and said, each of us is just a monad, and we're just kind of got all our stuff playing in here. But he believes, I guess in a way to be less weird, maybe somehow, that there are, in a way, to make it less weird for you, maybe, there really are, in a way, is if you say, well, is there actually a table? Is a table all in my mind? On one hand, Leibniz would say, yeah, all your experiences of the table are in your mind. But there's actually a table there, and the table is made of monads. So there, in a way, there really is a table. Likewise, what about your body? Do you really have a body? And Leibniz's answer is yes.
Okay,
Because it's made of,
but he has already said that there's no reality.
there is reality. So your body, what you experience in your body is all in your mind.
Because all we are is mind.
Right. But according to Leibniz, this may seem either better or worse, your body is completely real. So all of the monads that make your body are real. So you do have a heart, you do have lungs, you do have feet. They're all the bits that make
In
up
my
our
mind.
monads.
So
Yes.
which means there is no reality.
There is.
How you gonna say that? You just said
Yeah.
all of you in my mind, you're real in my,
All your-
it has created this in my mind.
All your experiences are in your mind,
So
but your body is. for
why it
Leibniz,
has
real.
created this in my mind, you said there's no room. So
There is no room.
if there's no room, how can there be a table? And if there's a table, where is the table? If there's no room,
Oh.
there's no space.
There is no space. There's just
So-
monads.
Right, so if there's no space, there's no room, Where is the table?
Think of it, again, one way to think of it is this. Imagine a world consisting entirely of cell phones. And they're all texting, they're all texting each other. The text doesn't actually go from phone to phone.
I agree.
Imagine that all the texts you ever receive are in your phone, but they just come up in order as they're done. So when you're doing your text to somebody, their phone already has the text in it, but it only gets shown to them when you text on yours. And God is making sure all the things sync up. So in a way, when you're feeling hungry, it's like your tummy's texting you. So it sends a message, hey, you're hungry. Then God makes a message appear in your mind, or it's already in there that, hey, you're hungry. So everything is real.
In your mind.
Right, but everything else is real too. So there is a table, there are
In your
chairs.
mind.
No, it's out there. The table's not in your mind. Your experience is in your mind, but the table's.
But what I'm trying to get you to say, there's no room.
There's no space or time.
That's right, there's
But
no
there
space,
is-
there's no time.
But all.
So, and there's no room, so if there's no room, there's no space, and there's a table.
There's a table.
Except that's in my mind.
No, it's in your mind and real. So another way to imagine.
I give up.
No, it's kind of weird. I mean, one way to kind of picture it is, imagine all the beings in the universe are minds. And metaphorically speaking, imagine we're all kind of like floating, and we're all thinking. And we're all real, but there's no outside physical universe. So the desk is made of minds, everything's made of, and so.
Well, see, I followed you there until you said, but he said there is a table.
There's a table.
And it's, but, okay, I give up. Here's the table.
I mean, you're right, it is, one reasonable criticism is, as you say, why do you need all this other crap when it's just in your mind? Just have, you just have people, things to think, and they have the experiences in there, why have all that, why say there's like a.
Yeah, I ain't gonna say, there is a table, but there's no space, no time, and it's all in my mind, but the note of
Your experiences are all in your
monads
mind.
are creating them, so, okay.
Well, it's like God created an infinite number of computers, all of the memories in them, and.
I followed you, I
Yeah.
followed that, that's not a problem.
Yeah, so
It's when you created the problem, when you created that table outside of
Yeah.
the mind.
Yeah, the table's not in your mind. Your experience is in your mind.
So where's
Table's
the
not there.
table?
Table's not in your mind. It's its own.
But
mind.
where is it?
It's not. Well, it can't be anywhere because there's no space.
Then it doesn't exist.
Well, you exist.
You just said,
Oh, it doesn't exist in space. So there's no space or separate space or time.
no.
It's just minds.
You don't see the paradox there. You created this thing. First you said it's in my mind. I followed that. I said, okay.
Your experiences are in your mind.
Then outside of my mind, there's a table that exists. But there's no space.
Nope,
And
no
there's no
space.
time for it to exist in.
No, it doesn't exist in space and time. Space and time is relative. It's a relation between things.
So,
Well, like
where's the
in-
table?
Where is the wrong question to ask? I mean, from your experience, from your standpoint of experience, it's right there.
Right, where?
There. Right here.
But there's a space there for it to be in.
No, there's no, well, we experience space. So, I mean, going the video game analogy works pretty well, because in a video game, there is no space in there. You can't like, you can't hop through the screen and run around in there.
Because there's nothing there.
Right.
It's in your mind. But you put a table there.
But the computer game, in a way, is real, because you're
Yeah,
playing the
I
game.
understand that.
And we're
But-
playing a,
But in
game.
reality, there's nothing there. But you just placed a real table there.
yeah,
And you said it's outside of my mind,
there's a real table right there,
right?
outside your mind.
And I'm experiencing it in my mind, and there's also a real table
There's
right
no-
there.
according
But
to
there
Leibniz.
is no right there. That's what I'm trying to
Right.
get you to see.
There is no right there. It's only as if it was right there. So our experiences are exactly as they seem to be. It makes, we can say, normal talk, the table is there, Tallahassee is so many miles away from Maine, and talk perfectly normal. But if you, Leibniz say, is there a separate space-time in which things exist? Leibniz says, no,
No.
there's not a separate space-time. Which again seems
I
crazy,
understand.
because our normal view, our Newtonian view is the view that space and time is a box, and we keep our stuff in the box. And Leibniz's view, yeah, super weird. Well, for Leibniz, everything that's real would be a monad.
So the wall?
The wall, well, the question of like how you divide it up, like what would be the bits, but yeah, I mean, the whatever makes up the wall would be monads. And so like the same with like the table would be made of monads.
It's very similar to the one that said everything's water and everything's
Yeah,
fire.
yeah, it's all monads.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no separate stuff, it's all, you know, it's all monads. Just a big bucket of monads. Yeah, so it's super weird. Yeah. I don't believe this stuff.
I know you don't, but I'm just saying, nothing, I ain't saying nothing.
Yeah, because what kind of what creates the problem? In a way, what creates this thing is, when Descartes had the thing of, you are a body, but you have a mind that controls it somehow. And the question is, well, how does that even work? And this, for some reason, philosophers saw that as like a super big problem. I never thought it was a huge problem, but so then Leibniz says, well, you can't have causal interaction between things. So instead, you just have God creates everything, and nothing interacts, but everything is sort of pre-programmed, so it experiences as if.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, all in a way, which is kind of done, because everything is real. And you'd be like, to use an analogy, you'd be like, you put on a VR headset that recreates everything that's already happened. I mean, that seems, yeah, you could do it. It's like, here's my VR headset, what does it do? It perfectly recreates what your experience is like. Why would I do that? It's like, enjoy the technology. Yeah, so for Leibniz, all this stuff is real, but you're experiencing your own experiences, which in a way is kind of redundant. But again, the thing he was trying to avoid is that mind-body problem. How do things causally interact? And Leibniz said, there's no way things can causally interact, so it has to be just God he says God creates everything, boom.
Was he a philosopher before he came to?
No, he was a diplomat and ambassador. Then he died. So there's no actual causal interaction between minds and bodies, so problem solved. Super weird problem. Now, what about the freedom stuff? Now, one thing that Descartes tried to do, again, was have a realm for, the reason why I had the mind-body separation is you've got the mind, which is free, the body, which is ruled by science, and so you can have that two realms. So you can have your freedom, religion, morality, and then have all your sciencey stuff. Now, Leibniz addresses this as well. There are teleological explanations that we give in terms of purposes, like stuff that we do, and final ends, ultimate goals. You can also give mechanical explanations, science stuff, and he believes we can talk science. So we can, this will sound probably weird too, but we can talk about physics and biology and chemistry and talk as if there are, tables and chairs and bodies and chemicals and stuff. But his claim is, the ultimate explanation for everything will always be God. Why is something happening? Answer, God created it all, and everything is doing what it's doing because of God. And he believes that you can speak, as if souls are doing things in according to like ends and means, bodies are working according with laws, and he claims these two realms are in harmony, again, because of God. So, we can kind of have our science because we can talk about the physical objects, but in a way, there's not really matter up there. So ultimately, everything has to come down to God.
Can I ask one other crazy question? What's the purpose? Why consider mathematics and science and all this stuff?
Well,
when they don't, you can't do anything about it because everything that you perceive is in your mind.
Leibniz thinks that, it's a good question. If you believe in determinism, then nothing really matters. But he would think that you can do the sciencey stuff, and that would be useful. I'll use an analogy. You don't play video games, so it's not going to work great for you, but when playing video games, so people, they're fake, they're not real. But people go and learn, like if you're doing games like Warcraft or Warframe, and you're doing like a complicated like boss fight, you go and like on YouTube and you go on the wiki pages to look up how to do it. You learn the mechanics of the fight. Even though it's all fake, learning that is still useful, because that way you don't go in and just get slaughtered and have your friends yelling at you, why are you standing in the fire? God damn it, shoot the thing. And so you can learn the mechanics of it even though it's all not real. And what you do, instead of like, for example, if you want to play Warframe or Warcraft, you don't go and like get the code for the program and study all the code. You go to the YouTube videos and wiki pages to learn how the mechanics work. Now, ultimately behind all the games are just the code, but you don't learn programming to play the game, you learn the mechanics. So ultimately it's kind of like this, behind everything is God. But when you're doing stuff in normal life, like making sandwiches or building houses, you wouldn't go and read the Bible to learn how to make a sandwich. You go and learn about how sandwiches work. And so he thinks that as a practical point, you can still do all the sciencey stuff here, just like if you're playing
So
games.
you're saying to learn the science and stuff will teach you how to play the game better in your mind?
Yeah, play the game better here. So that way you make good sandwiches, or make better sandwiches. Yeah, so just like you wouldn't read the Bible to learn how to like make a better sandwich or repair your car, although ultimately if you believe in God, you believe ultimately God is behind everything, but if you want to learn how to make a good sandwich, you go to like a video about sandwiches. Now, things get even more messed up.
Can they?
You can, it can always get worse. Basic truth of the universe. Infinite worseness. Now, what about this freedom and determinism stuff? Now, as I mentioned, you can think of the monad again as, this will be a crappy metaphor, but imagine each monad as like a self-contained spaceship, and you are the captain of that ship. You're the only one on board. And you have your hard drive, and everything you ever experience is played for you from this drive. So you're cruising around in your space monad. Now, one obvious implication of this, if everything you ever experience is already in your monad, that means you can't be free. Because everything you do, say, eat, dance, drive, it's all going to be in there. Otherwise, things would get off track. So this would be like me, say, driving home, like 20 minutes. So that's the 15-minute digital tape of me driving. But it's already in there. So I can't do otherwise. That's what I'm going to do. And eventually, further down, there's like the end. My final thoughts on Earth, which is, damn, that's a big dinosaur. True story. So it's all in there already. So it seems that we can't be free. Because it's already in there. Everything a movie is playing to us, the movie is our life. Now Leibniz does want us to be free. So how does he make that happen? Well, he kind of cheats, like Spinoza did. He claims freedom is unimpeded self-development, as opposed to arbitrary, unpredictable, spontaneous action.
Wait a minute. How you gonna self-develop when everything is already in your hard drive? Everything you're gonna do, everything you're gonna say is already there. So how can you self-develop? Because there's nothing to develop. Because everything.
Well, because as you progress through time, you'll develop as part of the program. Now, this is how Leibniz kind of cheats and kind of doesn't. He claims we're all free because everything we do comes from who we are. So when God creates us, we have our inner, we have our character, our inner nature, our virtues, our values, etc. in there. And God creates what we do based on who we are. So everything we do, everything you do because you are who you are, and not somebody else.
I can do that. I can buy that.
And so that's set. You do what you do because you are what you are. You could not do otherwise. So we're free because everything we do comes from us. We're not controlled like puppets on strings. So God is not a puppet master controlling us. So in a way, he kind of cheats because we're not free in the sense that we have this magical free will that we can do anything. But we are free because everything we do because of what we are. And we're not manipulating and control from the outside. Like, puppets, or so he claims. Now, this is what he says is all we can expect from freedom. Now, again, one of the big debates about freedom is people say, free will, but they don't really know what they mean. Because if we think of free will as you could do otherwise, then what would that even mean? We don't want to say that free will is random and arbitrary, like rolling a dice, because then you're not free. And so we don't even really know what we mean by being free. And Leibniz says being free means you do what you do because you are what you are. And you're both free and determined. You're free because everything you do because you are what you are, and you do what you do because of that. But you're also determined because everything you do because of what you are, and you couldn't do otherwise. Or so he claims.
Therefore, what happens happens.
Yeah, because you do it, because you couldn't do otherwise.
Things like that.
So he also thinks, and here's the radiance of God, this sort of the end game is this. According to Leibniz, each of us is like a little divinity, and we can become part of God's society. He is to us what a prince is to his subjects, a father to his children, and we form, the assemblage of spirits forms the city of God. So his whole thing is God. So why did God create the world? This is a good question. Now his answer is this. God needs us, and this may seem blasphemous, but God needs us because in order for God to have his glory, we have to exist. Because if we did not know God's goodness and greatness and admire him, he would have no glory. Because glory requires an audience. And so God creates us to have his goodness, because he had to be good to somebody. And he creates us for his glory. We are God's fans. He had to create a fan base. And that's our job. Now he also believes that this plays out in justice. There's also a perfect harmony of justice. And God, in addition to being the architect of the world, is also the legislature of the world. And he believes, and it's quite an interesting view, that sins, by the very nature and mechanical order of things, bring their own punishment with them. So his view is sin is self-punishing. Likewise, good is self-rewarding. That good will always lead to rewards. Now, he was aware of the obvious fact that it seems often that the wicked do fine and the good suffer. And so he claims that eventually everything will work out perfectly. And if we were sufficiently wise, we would realize this, that ultimately it all plays out. Now, of course, this creates a problem because we do because we are what we are. God creates us, and so we're punished for things that we could not do otherwise. So if someone has like an affair, they couldn't do anything different. The affair is not their choice. They are created by God to have that affair. So you end up in this really...
He was created to have the affair.
Created to have the affair, and then God punishes that person for having the affair because he created them to do so, which seems unfair in the affair. Yeah, so you do end up with this really difficult scenario where how do you reconcile like God creating everything, God knowing everything, and doing everything, with people being free and thus meriting punishment and reward? And it's a big challenge. And then Leibniz died, and he gets rewarded or punished as appropriate. Okay, so next time, appropriate enough on Halloween, we'll talk about ghosts. So good rest of the day, and I'll see you on Halloween with some ghosts.